maybe the single most common thing that I see that people are really unhappy with about Facebook is the distortion that you get from iPhones and from, all these cameras that are in people's smartphones and everything. They put the worst possible lens to take a picture with in those cameras. And just so you don't feel bad, absolutely, unless you're just like a supermodel, everybody looks terrible when you take a picture of them with the phone. And I have, I'm just like, stay away from me when there's a party or something and somebody's walking around taking pictures of their iPhone. I mean, call me nuts, but I just I stay away, and you need to try and take, if you want to take pictures and if you want to be a photographer, the first thing to learn if you want to take a portrait is to shoot with a zoom lens. You need at least like a 50 millimeter, 85 millimeter or whatever, just try to shoot with a zoom lens because that's going to make your face look good. Okay. Now this isn't a photography class, so I'm going to jump in. This is kind of a cool advanced thing that you can do with Photoshop now. Now I want to apply the liquify filter to this picture, but this picture is made up of a few different layers. We've got our layers here. And what I used to do back in the day was I would select all these. I'll hit Shift and click on those, and I'll hit Control E, and it will merge all those pictures together. But I don't want to do that because I want to stay like we've been talking about. We want to be non-destructive, and we want to always be able to go back and edit things. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply. When I apply the filter, I'm going to apply it to a smart object. Okay, so let's go. And I'm going to right click. While all these are selected, I can click anywhere in here, and I'm going to click Convert to Smart Object. So now all of that stuff is contained right here. Okay, if I double click on this, you can see that another file opens. And we've got our tabs up here for all the files that are open. Okay, and you can go back and edit this part of the image if you want to. But I'm just going to close that. Anytime, let me give you a quick, show you something really quick. If you start changing this image, I'm just going to do something really obvious, I'm going to draw like a green. I'm going to do that. Okay, now that is in the smart object. Now let's save that. This is a little risky, but let's save that. And let's go back to our other image. Now that is in our image. That is part of our image, So if we go back to the image we were working with, let me do Control Z and save that again and go back to our original image. Now that's all corrected again. Okay, this is stuff that I've worked with people who have been in design for a very long time, and this was something that was added a few years ago, and a lot of people still don't even know, they still don't understand what smart objects are. Okay, so you're seeing something that's fairly advanced. It's something that you should know because it's pretty well integrated into Photoshop now, but it's still something that a lot of people don't know. I mean, I know a lot of very, very high level Photoshop, graphic designers and everything, and they don't mess with this because they get so accustomed to working in Photoshop in a certain way that after new versions come out, they just never update to it. But it makes working in Photoshop much easier. Okay. So let's go up to, we're going to apply a filter to this. And the liquify filter is the big filter out there that people have used for, Elle Magazine, Vogue, all these places to manipulate pictures of celebrities, pictures of models, and really fine-tune body shaping and changing different aspects of, making things bigger and smaller, whatever parts you want to make bigger and smaller. So let's go up to the filter tool and we're going to hit liquify, okay? And the nice thing about here we go. Here's the liquify panel. I don't want you to get all worried about this. Don't worry too much about it because don't worry about any of this stuff over here at this level. The only thing we're going to deal with are these two guys right here. Okay, and really the only thing that I use ever is the pucker tool and the bloat tool. And there's one over here that's I call it the nudge tool, but it says it's called the forward warp tool. I don't call it that. So let's see what the pucker tool does. And I think you could probably guess. Let's just pretend like she just had some sweet lemon and her mouth starts to pucker from that. So let's start clicking and clicking and clicking and clicking. And you can see what's going on there. It's, puckering everything. And you can start getting some fairly I would say, disturbing images from that. So I'm going to hit Control Alt Z and just go back to, or I can just hit, I can hit Alt and go up here to reset, and we'll get back to how her face was before. Hello, reset. Oh well. Another thing about this program is, or about this filter, is it's very, very RAM intensive. So whenever I'm using it, my computer just goes very slow. So that's what we're seeing, and unfortunately we have to kind of look at this face for a second as it is. All right, let's try that. Oop. Okay, let's go back and do that again. Liquify. All right, so that tool makes everything pucker like that, and the other one is bloat. So that basically does the opposite and makes things look much larger. It'll make the face rounder. It'll give you kind of this funny, makes everybody look like a Fraggle, basically. Let's go back, Control Alt Z. Let's get it back to normal. Now, what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to I'm going to be very subtle and just correct a teeny little bit of what the camera has done. So I'm going to go back to pucker, and I'm going to hit curly bracket right. And I'm just going to click, I'm going to make the brush really big and just click a couple of times on her face. And the goal of this is to take away the distortion that the lens has made. So let's try that. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, as you can see, her face is looking a little less distorted now. Okay. Now this is, as with everything, you have to kind of do your own judgment call, So I think that looks a little bit more like the camera isn't distorting her face. And I might zoom in, curly bracket left and right, and do her nose just a teeny little bit more. You're not trying to change the person's face. What you're trying to do is make it look like it actually looks in real life. So I think, I'm not going to do much more with Liquify because you can go crazy. I mean, some people try to, you can see pictures of celebrities where they'll take the cheekbones and they'll start moving things, and making the face skinnier. And you can take the pucker tool and add it to the cheeks and start you can manipulate people a lot with this tool. And one thing that I see people do sometimes is they'll even make the eyes a little better. So I'll just, I'll show you how that looks, And so you can start playing with it, but I really don't like to make somebody, try to manipulate to that point. I just try to get somebody looking how they actually look. So let's click this guy. Okay, there we go. And I think that looks a little better. It looks like the lens was actually taken, that the lens is not distorting so much. So let's click OK. And now we can click on this and see what the changes are. And I think that when you look at the original, now you can see the distortion because this is the changed image and this is the image before we changed it. So can you see kind of what the lens was doing? Okay. Now quickly, I want to end this this skill tutorial by just adding a little bit to the top. I'm going to do what I do to every picture, and that's just a little fine tuning with curves. I'm not going to make this a separate section because it's so quick. So I'm going to open up the curves and I'm going to add some contrast. Like I mentioned before, we're going to make a little bit of an S to bring up the contrast. We don't want to lose, if you go too far into the white, you start losing detail. So you want to just play around, get it a little bit lighter so you're not losing detail, but you're just adding some, you're just defining things out a little bit more. Let's get rid of that, and I don't think we really need much here. Just add it a little bit. Okay, and I'm going to do the thing that I mentioned before that I love to do, which is go to our blue, boost the blue in the dark parts, and then drag it down in the yellow parts. And the reason why things turn yellow, this is adding blue and this is taking blue away. And the reason why it turns yellow when you start taking blue away is that it's not necessarily taking blue away. It's shifting the blue to the opposite of blue, and the opposite of blue on the color spectrum is yellow. So one of the reasons why you see a lot of movies that have highlights, like if you watch Michael Bay movies, you'll notice that the images that he has are very blue and yellow. And the highlights are yellow, and the shadows are always usually just a little bit blue. And the reason why, a colorist once told me that the reason why they do this is because it gives the image, like psychologically, it makes the image a lot more pleasing for the eye, because you've got those two colors. You've got blue. Whenever you have two colors, like, think Christmas, you've got green and you've got red. And I know this is fairly basic, but those are two, opposite colors. So they work together and they look very pleasing together. When you put colors that don't combine like that aren't like, that way on the color spectrum, it doesn't quite look the same. So one of the things that people do in films, like, they've done it way too much now, and they're starting to kind of chill out a little bit with it, is they do that blue shadow and yellow highlights just to get that little edge of making it more pleasing for people when they look at the image and they can see that contrast of blue to yellow. And I just add a little bit of that to my image. I like a slightly yellow image because for me it warms it up. This just, this looks very sad and depressing, so I bring it down here and it looks more warm and it feels better. So that's about it for, working with an image. You can do this for, every single person that I know. Once, every time I show them what I do, they're always like, oh, please, can you do this to this image and do this to that image? There's a huge demand for this. The only problem that you're going to run into is that nobody wants anybody to know that you've photoshopped their image. Okay, they don't mind if it's got a little bit of a filter on it, but you have to make it look like it's real. And you can't do, there's something else that, people do all the time that don't really know what they're doing in Photoshop. Let me take this for just a second. I'm going to copy this and just hit Control E. So this is not this is just the picture again. Now they'll take a picture like this and they think that they can smooth the skin out by blurring it. And this is probably the biggest mistake that I ever see with people, that are kind of new to Photoshop, but they're trying to act like they know what they're doing. So they'll take this picture and I'm going to do this real quick. Okay. They'll take this, they'll duplicate the picture, and then they'll go up to Filter, Blur, Gaussian Blur, the only blur you ever need to know, Gaussian Blur, and they'll blur the image. And then they'll go through on the layers, the layer mask, and they'll start, coloring out all the parts except for the skin. Now, if somebody does this for your picture, run away, because this is like the worst thing. I mean, I see this all the time, and they that's, to them, that's like making the face look better, is just like blurring out the image. And that's the worst possible way that you can do things, and you can bring this down. But, just a quick tip for you: don't ever trust anybody who just blurs an image and then, cuts out the eye holes, because they have no idea what they're doing. All right. See you in the next skill.